Hey, good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. Hope that you are all okay. Nice to see you all. And I'm sorry there hasn't been a proper schedule sent out yet for the new semester, and it's been a bit of a balagan. Um, I'll just share that the reason is that I haven't. I'm recuperating. I was involved actually in a very serious car accident. But
Paola, ¿puedes decir algo? A ver si te escucho. Di algo. Say something. I
can
don't
you
know if
hear me?
it work.
Can you hear me, everyone?
Paola, di algo. This is
I
like,
can hear you.
Sí, es que el Rab está hablando también.
Um, yeah, so I was for like a month, no, not a month ago. It's a bit over 2 weeks ago. I was involved in a um, car accident, and Baruch Hashem, I'm okay, but slowly. So I didn't, and recuperating. So I didn't have the time to get this semester together. But here I am, and you see me, so I'm okay. Alive and well, Baruch Hashem. So that's what's important. Um, a bit weak. It was a miracle. The guy in the trauma room in the hospital, he said that he couldn't imagine that I'm the same person who came out of the car that he saw. There was nothing left of the car and everything left of me. So I guess Hashem wants me here to be with you today. So that's the good thing. Um, and so I guess it's a good enough excuse, right, for not having the semester sent out to all of you in time. But I do help. Let's go. If we just look forward, I'll explain to you where we are and what we are planning so that you can plan. And we also have some of the people here are new to this shiur. So it isn't always this disorganized. Paula, you can testify to that, right? And Cecilia, right? It's usually we have a good schedule. So I'll just explain in general, like where we're going, and then hopefully I'll send out an email. And some of you are not on the email list yet, so I hope we can manage that as well. So what the last 2 weeks, what we were doing is we were finishing everything that was connected to kashrut, to all of the laws of kosher, with things that were more general in terms of eating outside, more practical also, eating outside, kosher lists, and all of that. Before the summer break, we had gone through all the basics of kashrut, which are connected to um, from how to run a kosher kitchen to milk and meat to what is kosher, what is not kosher, and very how to kosher things. How do you make your kitchen kosher? What do you do if you're in a non-kosher place? What can you eat? What can you not eat? How can you kosher? All of that. And anyone who missed any of that, all of it is recorded. Um, and Paula, maybe you can send a link for the YouTube channel in the chat so that anyone who missed that, it's very important because right now we're going to continue on from kashrut. So you should have everything in terms of basic knowledge of kashrut. You should have that in what we have learned before the summer and in the last two shiurim. As always, just in general, as we do have some people here who are new, I'll explain that the shiur here is based on the fact that all of you have your local rabbi, and the local rabbis are giving the shiurim, as well as myself, who I'm the director of this of the Beit Midrash and the Beit Din as well. Um, so any questions that come up, any person who's living a life of halakha will constantly have questions. That's a normal thing. You're not supposed to know everything, and you constantly end up in situations which you can, which you have the need to ask someone. Okay, just 2 days ago, my young daughter, she came up to me, and she was using the milk spoon by mistake in the meat dish. What do I do? Is it okay? Is it not okay? How can it's regular things, but also in general. We always have a rabbi that we will ask questions, and a rabbi will have a rabbi to ask. Um, and that's how it was set in the Torah, because that's what Yitro actually says to Moshe, because everyone was depending so much on Moshe to give him the answers. And he says, if I, as your father-in-law, can give you some advice, please delegate some other people to be able to deal, so that you're not dealing with everything. And that's part of the leadership, is to be able to delegate that to other people. And then only the biggest questions come to you. So even today, so you have big rabbis who are um, or who will be teaching hundreds or thousands of students, and they will go out and they will be the rabbis. And then if they have questions that they don't know, they will come back. So now all of you come into that line in terms of when you're living a life of halakha, then you'll constantly have questions. If you don't, then it's a bit strange. Right? You should have questions, because first of all, you shouldn't know anything, and you always end up in new situations that you didn't know. So therefore, going back to the shiur is giving basic principles in order for you to have the basic knowledge to live your life and to run a Jewish home and to live your life as a Jewish person. Okay, that's the basic. And what we will go through in the 2-year cycle is everything that is necessary, from kashrut and Shabbat to relations, interpersonal relations, to business, to money, to everything that the Torah is not only a spiritual guide, it's a very practical guide to live our lives ethically and morally. So therefore, it comes down to the very details of making sure you pay someone's wages on time, right? Or how do we speak about other people or not speak about them behind their back? So all of that is part of this Shiur Halacha on Sunday mornings. I'm just giving a little bit of an introduction for those who are new. And then on Wednesdays, we have something which is more philosophical, that is connected either to the Midrashim or to like now we're in Elul. So from this Wednesday, we'll be learning Sefer Yonah, the book of Yonah, and commentaries on it. So that's a basic introduction. If anyone has any questions or one more last thing I'm going to say as a bit of an introduction, is that uh, it's a bit difficult for me and anyone else teaching, because we would love to be with you in the same room, because that's what a proper Beit Midrash should be. On the other hand, it's very comfortable for you to be in your homes with your coffee on Sunday morning, right? But what I do ask is two things. First of all, feel free to unmute yourself if anything is unclear, and just to stop me, because I'm just right. Like now I'm speaking and I'm hoping that you're listening. And secondly, if we have anything which is not only unclear, you want to add something, you want to add a reference, you want to say, oh, that's something that just happened to me this last Shabbat, or can I ask something about that? Then it's wonderful to have an interactive shiur, and not only monotonous, that I'm like now just speaking. And also, if anything comes up that you would like to mention that you don't feel comfortable, or you don't want to stop the teacher, you can always write in the chat, and we will always go back to the chat to see if anything has come up. So I'm going to stop now and ask if everything is clear, if there's any questions, then bevakasha, please. If you have anything, just get used to unmuting yourself. Anyone want to unmute yourself?
Yes, me.
Yes, great.
Hi, good to see you again. So I have a question with Rosh Hashanah coming up, and being invited to Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah dinners. But the thing is, in my experience, at least in our community in Oslo, a few people are actually kosher or have a kosher kitchen, and also not many of them live close to the synagogue. So I'm struggling with balancing this. Obviously, you want to celebrate Rosh Hashanah with other Jewish families, but on the other hand, what if you can't eat there because the kitchen isn't kosher or they live far away, so you would need to take the train or whatever, because obviously you're not allowed to travel on Rosh Hashanah either. So I'm just wondering if you have any guidance in that regard.
Okay, thank you. It's a very good question that I think has to do with the process that a lot are going through in this shiur. So the I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but the more you become very careful and actually start keeping a life of halakha, in which you're keeping a kosher kitchen, you're keeping a kosher life. It means that I say unfortunate because it's fortunate that you're doing so, but unfortunate because you're putting yourself at a more stringent level than the majority of the community around you. If you were to be living in Paris, in Amsterdam, in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, or many other places which have, large Jewish communities which keep kashrut, never mind Israel, anywhere right where you are, then you won't have that dilemma because you'll be able to be celebrating the same. In the communities in the Nordic communities, let's say, since many in the community are not stringent both about Shabbat and Yom Tov and Kashrut, it means I think that you either need to connect yourself to those who are, or to try to connect and make your own support group in which you can be supporting each other. And we have enough in the last few years that have taken upon mitzvot for themselves in all of the different communities, that is a possible thing to do. In other cases, it really rests on the rabbi's shoulders to be hosting everyone, which is nice, but also very difficult, of course, to constantly be at the same person and at the rabbi's home, etc. But my suggestion would be, since you're not alone, and since other people in Oslo, for example, but in all of the communities represented here, have people who have gone through the conversion process, for example, in the last couple of years, then I think it's possible to try to create that group. And you can definitely reach out to Rav Yoav, to ask him if he can help with that or help connect you with those, because to be celebrating Rosh Hashanah, for example, in order to have the atmosphere, you then are eating in a non-kosher home, then it's like you're shooting yourself, in the back. You're doing something which conflicts itself. You're getting the atmosphere, but you're not keeping kosher. So or if you were to go and you want to be there for the atmosphere, but then you say, oh, well, I keep kosher, and then you end up asking too many questions that it becomes uncomfortable for the person, and that's not nice either. So it's not something you want to be doing or putting upon someone to say, oh, I'm keeping kosher and you're not kosher enough for me. So that's why I think that the best way to forward is to find a few people, a few families that you can connect with, or other people, even in this group here, or from previous groups that have been here, that you can create that sort of group. Or if you have a few families that would love to host, don't be shy about that, because you're not not you, Anushka, but all of us, right? Yeah, you have to be a bit forward-coming and asking the rabbi, oh, Rosh Hashanah is coming up, and in just a few weeks, I need help because we're going to have Rosh Hashanah, we have Sukkot, we have a very intense period which has a lot of unique things about it. And the last thing that I would answer is that being in a proper home, which is keeping halakha, is the best way to learn. And if you're not in such a place, then it's going to be constant questioning rather than learning. So I think it's really important to try to connect to, or either create your own group, but the best would be to have someone who can be connected to that group who is a bit more knowledgeable so that it's a learning process for you. But don't be afraid if you make mistakes. The question is, how do you improve, right? It's not, oh, I'm so, I should have known that. No, this is a process. And this period coming up, which we're going to talk about today, is a very important learning period, intense and important learning period. So I answered a quite long answer to a short question, but I hope that was okay for you, Anushka.
Yeah,
Um,
that's very helpful, because my backup option then always is Chabad, because then at least I know it's kosher and it's close to me. But obviously, I also want to be more like in a family kind of environment, like not just like a big group, but more like the family, and see how Jewish family actually celebrate. But it's definitely a good point. I will reach out to the rabbis.
yeah. And regarding Chabad, I would say that you want to imagine yourself and learn how you're going to be doing it yourself. And
Yeah,
when you go to Chabad, which are wonderful in providing the necessities, it's almost like going to a restaurant, right?
yeah,
In other words, you're being serviced, which is wonderful, right? But you're not learn. It's not a place so much in which they don't have the opportunity either to teach now the amount of people that are there. So it could be you'll learn some things, but it's more like our service, like going to a restaurant, where as a family setting is both more intimate and also a place where you can learn much better, I would say.
yeah, yeah.
So if that is possible, then I think it's much more because it's where the way that you're going to try to learn how you're going to be running your own home, Bezrat Hashem. So in that way, it's much better in a family setting, like you say.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Anyone else? Okay, perfect. So, what I would like to do, what we're going to do in the shiurim, if we look at the calendar, then talking about the Wednesday shiurim, we only have the Wednesdays um, until Rosh Hashanah, because after then all of the Chagim fall on Wednesdays. But in terms of the Sundays, we're going to be actually we'll be able to have the shiurim from this Sunday running down until until the Sunday before Yom Kippur. I'll send it out on a proper schedule, but just to let you know. And then the Sunday between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, I think we won't have a shiur because everyone is very busy at that time. It's a very, very busy time. So we have 5 shiurim, if I count correctly, between now and then. So what I would like to do today is we'll have a basic introduction to both to the Jewish calendar and holidays, um, because it's very important to understand how that works. And we'll see if we have time left. We'll get a bit into Rosh Hashanah, but then we'll have at least 2 shiurim that will go into the details, both of the schedule and the different special prayers of Rosh Hashanah, the meaning of Rosh Hashanah. Starting from today, we can maybe manage to talk about Elul, the month that we are in now, and then afterwards talk about Rosh Hashanah itself, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. So we're gonna transfer from the kashrut and start something that has to do with high holidays, as they were called. So that will be our shiurim between now and Yom Kippur. Okay, so I'd like to start in general with the some general knowledge about the Jewish calendar, which is very important to understand, because it's not only, oh, I have Rosh Hashanah coming up. It's, wait, how does this work? How does the Jewish calendar work? There's also some confusion because the month of Tishrei is the 7th month, but then we call it Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year. And about Rosh Chodesh. When do we have Rosh Chodesh? How does it fall? So something which is very general. And my assumption is that there's different levels of knowledge in this group here. So again, if you want to take it further and ask a question or something that I said is not clear enough, then you can just ask for clarification. Okay? Thumbs up if you're all with me, if you're still with me today. Okay. Great. Okay, so when we look at the Jewish calendar in general, it's actually the first mitzvah, the first commandment that was given to the Jewish people as a nation. And if we um, if we open up the passages in Shmot, we won't do that now because of lack of time, but it says right at the beginning, just before Am Yisrael, as they're preparing the Paschal Lamb, and as they're preparing themselves to leave, then Hashem says to them, the first mitzvah that they receive. So you might think, what's the first thing that they are taught is to believe in God. The first thing is Shabbat. No, the first thing that they were given as a commandment is the calendar, because everything is based on that calendar. And Hashem says to them, "HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodeshim." I'm in chapter 12 in Shmot in Exodus, if you do want to open, but we'll just go through it quickly. "HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodeshim, Rishon hu lachem lichodshei hashana." This month is the head, the beginning of the month. It will be the first of the months for you. Now, if we reference back to Genesis, to the when Hashem tells us how he created the world, so there's something very strange, first of all. There's many things that are strange in the story of Genesis, but one thing is that the first thing that was created was light. But then it takes 4 days until the sun and the moon and the stars are created. So there's a question, what light is there if there's no sun and no moon? But is it spiritual light? Is it what is actually light when there's no actual world, that is just chaos, or just a matter that hasn't formed into land yet and hasn't formed into the seas which come later? So what is that exact moment of what we call the first day? But one thing is clear is that the world as we know it today comes on the fourth day. And the fourth day, the reason I mention it is that already there in Bereshit, Hashem says, I have created the sun and the moon, or the big light and the small, and the small light, for them to be for you, a way for you to count the days and the years. So you see that the idea of a calendar, and we know, that is the case, which we'll go into very soon. But we know that the sun and the moon have always, for all civilizations, not only for the Jewish people, have been used, especially in, if you talk about the older civilizations that were before the modern world, the sun, the moon, the stars, they were very, very aware of, the the fact that you can set a calendar according to it. If we look back to the old Egyptian calendars that exist, if we look at the Maya calendars, or wherever the older civilizations are, you see that they were very, very aware of the lunar and of the stars, and as a way to pass the seas, etc., etc. So the basic understanding is that we have two separate systems, and how do they coordinate is something very important to understand. When Hashem says this is the first of the month for you, this is the first of the months, and it will be the beginning of the year for you, right? Rishonu lachem lichodshei hashana will be the first of the months of the year. What is a month? Like the word month is connected to the moon. Today, in the Gregorian calendar that we use, that most of us use, when you say it's whatever date, you say, okay, today is the 31st of August. When does that day start? It will start at midnight. And it will start at midnight in different places, according, right? So you'll have the day start in different places. And there's no connection whatsoever between this day and something happening in nature in order for it to become August 31st. You don't look up at the sun in the morning of the 31st of August and say, oh, I can see it's the 31st. On the other hand, in the evening, when I look up at the moon, I can automatically know what day of the month it is. Basically, approximately, I can know what day of the month it is. And I can know, for example, that when I will look up, if I leave the synagogue on Yom Kippur evening and I look up at the sky, I will see a moon that is 2/3 full. I know that now, not because I'm a prophet, because that's the system that is set, right? And I know that when I'm sitting outside in the sukkah on Sukkot, I know that I will see a full moon above. And if I go right forward to the month of Nisan, if I go forward to the first month, I know that Pesach night, right, Lela Seder, there will be a full moon. And not only do I know that, I know that when the Israelites left Egypt, they left on a full moon. So when Hashem says to them, prepare yourself now, this is the month that you will be leaving Egypt, they're basically waiting for the full moon, right? When they're leaving and they're going into the desert in the middle of the night, they are going to leave on the full moon. So we are following the moon, and we have to try to figure out how do we follow and how do we make that match with the solar system as well. Pauline, bevakasha.
Just the first question. Is full moon then meaning Rosh Chodesh?
Okay, so full moon is the middle of the month, so it's a bit strange, right? It's the 15th of the month. So Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month, is when we see no moon. It's the first moment when you can actually see the first sliver of the moon beginning. Okay, the moon is a bit strange because the way that we're counting the moon is we're counting it from the first sliver that we can see of the moon until the max of that lunar cycle when the sun is shining on it in that way, right? So that will be the 15th, and then it will be sort of an anticlimax from that full moon, which is on the 15th, until the end of the month. Okay, when the new cycle will begin again. So the Rosh Chodesh, the head of the month, or the beginning of the month, is symbolizing when the new cycle has come, which will be fulfilled on the 15th, right? So when you look at Pesach, for example, Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the first day of Nisan. 15 days later, 2 weeks later, 2 weeks and a day later, is when we will have Pesach. Okay? Okay, so now the question is, if we were just to follow the lunar cycle, if we only followed the moon, then we would have it's an amazing thing because you can look up in the Talmud, and the Talmud tells you the exact time that it takes the moon to make its full cycle. And it took NASA until the 1970s to find that exact reference of 29 point whatever it is. I don't remember the number that is written in the Talmud 2,000 years ago, and the scientists cannot figure out how they had that precise calculation. But anyway, so we have 29 point something days a year, which is the full moon, the cycle of the moon. Okay? If you do that amount of that number times 12, you end up with 354 days. Okay? You end up with 354 days. As you all know, the solar cycle is 365 days. Right? So what we have is a difference of 11 days between the solar and the lunar. What happens would what would be is we can say according to the Torah we just follow the moon. So it's very simple. We know when the moon begins. You can see it scientifically. You can just look up and see it in the skies. That's what was done in the old days. We'll talk about that soon. Okay, but basically, so we would have a lunar cycle year. This is exactly how the Muslims, how their calendar is set. But because their calendar is set in this way, Ramadan, for example, will all of the time, the season of the Ramadan will not be at the same time. It will constantly go back every year 11 days. So that if Ramadan was, right, in the middle of the summer, it's now going backwards towards the winter. Does everyone follow me? You understand why? No nods? Everyone's confused, or do you follow me? Please, someone.
Yes, follow.
Okay. If anyone's confused, so it keeps going backwards because we
Yes.
have 11 days that are missing. The issue is that the same place that the Torah tells us about following the moon, we're also told that Nisan is the month of the spring. That the Pesach is to be celebrated in the spring. So we have a problem because if we were to only follow it, then once in a while Pesach would come in the spring, because the spring is connected to the sun and it's not connected to the moon. So what we realize from the Torah is that we have to sync the two of them, that we have to make sure that our counting of the moon, which is how we set our calendar, is always set so that Pesach will be around right the time of the spring months in the Middle East, let's say. Okay, so that is one thing, and then you end up with Rosh Hashanah always being in the fall because of that, right? Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, you never end up with Sukkot being in the middle of right in the spring, right? So what was figured out is a system in which what we do is that we add we have a system of 19 years. Okay, because our sages understood as right with their wisdom that the sun and the moon will be on the same will re-meet in the same place every 19 years. If you want to check that, you can see that your Hebrew and the date that you were born on in the Hebrew calendar and in the Gregorian calendar will meet every 19th year. So if anyone here is 19 years old, or right, we don't have to check how many 19s you have, but if you do that check, then you'll see that is right how it meets up. Every 19th year, the two cycles meet together. So it'll be back at the same place where it was 19 years before. So within 19 years, we know that we have to add a few months in order for them to re-meet at the same, right, to keep synchronized. Which means that the last month of the year, Adar, is a flexible month in which every few years, right, 7 years out of 19 years, we will add an additional month so that we make up for all of those 11-day differences that we have, right? Because if you do that calculation, 11 times 3 already is a full month, right? So you need to add 7 months within a 19-year cycle, so you end up back at the same place. Mentioning a Hebrew date, right? So the date that we will go by in terms of holidays, and in terms of birthdays also, and in terms of everything that we are following, we'll follow the Hebrew date, not the Gregorian calendar. So I have, for example, I have the Gregorian date that I'm known by on my passport or on my ID, but that's in terms of my self-identity, one can say, I'll follow the Hebrew date, not the Gregorian. So it's nice that Facebook right, tells the whole world that I have my birthday, but it would be nice if someone updated Facebook that it's actually on a different day, right? That it's so I was born on August 8th, for example, 8/8, and my Hebrew date that I was born on then is Tu B'Av, the full moon of Av, right? The 15th day of Av, which is a wonderful day of like the celebration of love in we won't go into that now. So that is the day that I follow, which means that my children know that if they look up at the moon at the beginning of Av, they're waiting for the full moon for it to be my birthday. It's a different way of thinking, right? It's connected very much to the moon. And also in terms of the holidays, we will know that we are, according to the time that we are in the month, we know when the holidays will be. In the time of the temple, because the moon, you have to be able to see it because it can be either on the 29th or on the 30th day, depending when you can actually see that first sliver of the moon. So it can be actually on it's the 29th is the completion of the cycle, and then it can be on the 30th or what we would call the 31st in the Gregorian calendar. But we don't have a 31st in the Jewish calendar. What we have is the first of the month. So the first of the month can be either on the 30th of the previous month or on the 31st of the previous month. But in both cases, it will be the first of the month, right? So it could be very confusing because imagine if you don't know, according to what used to be done in the time of the temple, is that they would have a competition, right? And people would all be looking up at the sky. If you were looking on the 30th day, you wouldn't see anyone looking on the ground. Everyone would be looking up at the sky. And the first people who would be able to see the first sliver of the moon would run or ride as fast as they can to Jerusalem. And the Beit Din would be sitting there, and they would ask them astronomical questions, which they knew, which would be the case, to make sure that it was true. Did you see it? Where did you see it rising? Did you see it rising in the east, in the west? Where did it come from? Etc. Etc. And when they realized that the calculations met with this testimony of seeing the month, then they would say it's now Rosh Chodesh. But then you had a problem because you have people living very far away in the north of Israel. And later on, during the time of the Second Temple, you have people living in the area of Jordan or Iraq or Egypt, all over the place. How are they supposed to know that it's Rosh Chodesh? You ask, why is it important? Because imagine if they're keeping Seder night on the wrong night. They don't know when the month of Nisan begins. So they're going to have it, let's say, on the wrong, they can have it a night earlier, a night later, because they have no idea. So they can be starting their calendar and saying it's now Rosh Chodesh when it's not yet Rosh Chodesh, and then they're doing it a day earlier. Imagine if they're fasting Yom Kippur on the wrong day, and then they're told it's the wrong day, and then they have to fast again, right? So it's not only it's very important to know when the day occurs. So what they had is basically the oldest messaging system that humans created, right? Like an SMS today, right? What they would do is they would go up to the top of the mountains and they would light fires, and people would be waiting on the other side of the Jordan and waiting to see if they lit the fires. And once they saw the fire lit, they would know that it's Rosh Chodesh. They would light their fires and they would transfer the message in this way. And the Mishnah, written 1,600 years ago, tells us the exact names of the mountains, and we have these mountains today. We know exactly where they are. So it's one of them is a high mountain that I remember very well because it was when I finished my first part of my army service, right? So they try to prove that you can do something beyond, they give you a challenge. So our challenge was to climb this mountain with full gear, with carrying each other on up the mountain, and we had full gas masks on us, and it was in the middle of the desert. So that was how I remember this mountain quite well, because climbing up with full gas masks in the desert, with people, carrying each other up. And that was this mountain in the Jordan Valley, which the Mishnah tells us that it was lit from. So I can tell you that it's quite high and quite challenging to get up there. And that's why it's so high, because it's the highest point in the Jordan Valley, and that's where they were able to light, so that people on the other side would be able to see that it was lit. Okay, so it's just very interesting to know, but also how important it is to follow the lunar calendar. One, if we're not, Tikva, Shira, please.
I have a question about the stars, Kohabim. What
Mhm.
about the stars? If we can see 3 stars, so it's changed the day, the hot stuff, or can you explain about this? About the star, what is the meaning? And also in
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. So what, as you said, back in Bereshit, in Genesis, it says that the stars will also be a part of your counting. So we don't use them today. Besides, we know that we have the North Star, and we know that we can use it for navigation. But like you're asking, where does it fit into the counting? And the issue is that going from day to night is also very important, because that is when the day will change. And that is set by 3 stars, like you said, right? So the stars themselves, if not 3 stars that are together, but 3 stars that are far enough apart, means that it's already dark enough to be able to see them. And that will be the time that we will consider is going from one day to another. So we use that, for example, today we're just used to looking at the calendar, or receiving a calendar from the community, or looking on the internet. But there's very, very specific calculations regarding the stars, and when the stars come out, and when they can be seen in different places. So if I want to know when Shabbat is over, for example, so the sunset is not good enough, because the sunset is the end of the day. But when is the beginning of the night? Because we have to wait for the day not only to end, but for the next day to begin. So the sunset is usually not enough. In order for us to start the prayer of the evening, it is enough. We wait maybe 18 minutes between the sunset and and then we can already pray the evening prayer. And that's when we will begin Shabbat, for example. But Shabbat is not exactly 24 hours. It's a bit more than that, maybe 24 and a half hours, 25 hours. Also in the Nordics, it can be more than that, because there can be a bigger difference between, you can have a very long sunset before the night begins. We'll also notice that with Yom Kippur, because everyone's waiting, right, to finish the fast. So we'll start it before sunset, but we'll end it only by the 3 stars. Okay, so it's an important question. Thank you, Tikva, for that. And one other thing that has to do with the dates is, when does the date actually begin? You can say, why is that important? But if we have even like a legal document, for example, let's say a marriage document, right? Someone is married, and their chuppah is on a specific date. It's a legal document that the date has to be correct. Otherwise, everything written there is not valid. You can have, for example, a conversion document, right? You can have documents that the date is very important. If the date is wrong, then the document is not legal, halachically, according to halacha. So when does the date begin? The date begins after the 3 stars of the previous night, which is also a bit confusing, because if I'm invited to a wedding, and let's say I'm invited to a wedding on the 14th of Elul, let's throw out a date, okay? When am I invited to this wedding? You understand the question? I'm invited on the 14th. Well, since a wedding is not usually in the morning, so let's say it says 5 in the evening. So 5 in the evening I'm not looking at a calendar now. Let's say that the 14th of Elul is on a Tuesday. So 5 in the evening will be the 14th on that Tuesday. But if it's already 8 in the evening, it means that it's the previous night, because that day starts the previous night, right? So the date, we have to get used to the fact that when we talk about dates, it actually begins by sunset. And when you look for, if you wants to look for, you can look on the internet today. We used to have these calendar books at home. But if you want to see, okay, what is the Hebrew date that I was born on? So we'll ask you, were you born before sunset or born after sunset? That's why it asks that question. Because if you're born after sunset, you're actually born on the next day. As I mentioned to you before, I was born on Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av is a special day, right? And I was born at the end of the day. I was born in Jerusalem at the end of the day. And the first thing that my mother asked was not, she didn't ask if the baby was okay. She asked, is it sunset? Right? Because she wanted to make sure that I was born, whatever I was, boy or a girl, or, that I was born on Tu B'Av. It was important for her. So that was the first thing that my ears heard from a human being in this world. Is it sunset? And since then, I've been stressed about sunset my whole life. No, just kidding. So it's a bit confusing, but it's a different system that we get used to. And what I mentioned before, it's very important because now we're going towards the holidays. So we have to know the sync of the Gregorian calendar with the lunar calendar is not something that most of us deal with, right? We just receive a calendar and someone has told us, okay, this year we're going to have 1 Adar or 2 Adar, and that's it. But in terms of the dates and when they change, and in terms of when the Chagim begin and end, and when the sunset and the 3 stars, these are things that we're going to see many, many times over the next month, especially since we have a lot of holidays. And then in terms of the lunar month, so that's something which is very important that we're going to be following closely. The last thing that I mentioned before, that I'll go back to now, is that we have the first question that I mentioned in the beginning, is that we have also different ways of counting the months, even if we're counting the lunar months. And the Mishnah tells us actually that there's 4 different types of Rosh Hashanah, because there's different countings for different things. There's an agricultural counting that you want to say when is the beginning of the agricultural year, that has nothing to do with either Nisan or Tishrei. And then you have Rosh Hashanah, which is the first of the month, which is the beginning of Nisan. So the Torah follows that throughout. And then we have Rosh Hashanah, which is Rosh Hashanah of the kings. In other words, when does the coronation of the king begin? Because we have, for example, in the book of Kings in the Tanakh, so you have, it says in the 2nd year of this and this king. So you don't have it particular to each king because he became king on July 17th. No, you have a time in the year which becomes his second year begins then, because in order to be able to count easier. So Rosh Hashanah of Tishrei, there's a difference of opinion in the Mishnah whether the world whether the beginning of the world began on Nisan, or the beginning of the world began on Tishrei, and it's left as an open an open debate, 2 separate opinions that are not decided whether the world was created. But in a way, we see in the Tefillot of Rosh Hashanah that we do follow the idea that the world was created in Tishrei. The Tishrei is the first month of the creation of the world, and that Adam Arishon, right? Adam and Eve were created on the 6th day, which would be Rosh Hashanah. So that the world was actually created 6 days before. Okay, so there is an open debate about that, but as I said in the Tefillot, we see that we do follow in a sense that Rosh Hashanah, because you say why then is if Rosh Hashanah is the 7th month, right? Then why is it that why don't we have Rosh Hashanah on Nisan? We should have it the first month before Pesach. We should have Rosh Hashanah, and 2 weeks later, we should have we should have the right, that calculation. But instead, it just makes us confused because we have the first month, which is Nisan. 2 weeks later, we have Pesach. And then the Torah says that on the 7th month of the year, on the first day of the 7th month, you shall blow the horns, the mitzvah of shofar. So the Torah actually says that it's on the 7th month. So then you say, wait, but is it Rosh Hashanah or is it not? Well, it's a bit, right? Yes, it's Rosh Hashanah. There is another Rosh Hashanah at the beginning of Nisan that we don't follow so much, we don't even mark it in our calendars. And then we have the Rosh Hashanah of the 7th month, which is what we are calling the Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year. And that's when the world was created, according to the majority opinion of Chazal, which is why we are following it. Okay? So I hope I gave you a good understanding of the Jewish calendar, and it's a bit confusing, but I hope that you follow it. Any questions before we go just into a few minutes about the month of Elul? Anyone? Okay, so either you all understand, either I was good at explaining or I was terrible at explaining and no one understands anything. So I hope it was okay. So it's very important because everything that we just said now is like a system that you have to get yourself used to. Wait, what time of the day it is? Because every day we have, right, the three prayers. We have Shacharit, Mincha, and Arvit that are following what I just told you. So we're following this daily. It's not only, oh, when does my birthday come out? No, this is something daily. And it also makes us be very synced to nature. The tefillot are also very synced to nature. Like I said before, August 31st has no connection to nature. But when you wake up in the morning, the tefillat shacharit is connected to nature waking up, to the birds chirping. The nighttime is connected. We mentioned the stars, like Tikva mentioned before, right? We mentioned the stars, we mentioned the moon, so it's all very much connected and supposed to make us be connected to the natural world that Hashem created for us, that we are living in. Okay? Now, just a few words with the 5 minutes we have left. Nina, okay, great, we have a question.
Oh, I'm a little bit confused about this birthday, because to sum up this midrash, I ask you a simple question about my birthday was in Jewish calendar in the middle of Pesach. The 27th of April at the usual calendar. But how can I find the Jewish, my Jewish month, my date in Jewish for every year?
Yes. So if you go back to the date that you were born, it used to be a bit complicated. Now in the internet, it's very easy to do so. Go back to the date that you were born and see, you can look up and you can look on the internet and just write Hebrew Gregorian calendar, and you can find both side by side or together. Go back to the date that you were born on the 27th of April in the year that you were born. And then you will see the Hebrew date that it says there. The question then to ask yourself is, were you born before the sunset or after? Because if you were born in the morning, then there's no question. It's very clear when it was, right? But if you are if you were born in the evening, right, then it could be the previous evening, but then the Hebrew date will not correspond to that English date. It will only correspond every 19th year. So that if you want to celebrate your Hebrew birthday, then it will be on a different day than than the one that you're used to celebrating. I see Anushka sent there are links, but they'll also ask you this question: was it before sunset or after? I'm sure they'll ask you that question because that's the only way to know. Is that clear, Lina?
Yes, I know that I was born in the morning, so but to find the Jewish, I thought it was maybe it's too much mathematics. I don't know. I'm sorry.
But no, it's okay. I see that we have here a link in that you can actually put in your
Yes. Okay.
thank you, Anushka. You can actually
Thank you. Thank you.
so they make it too easy for everyone today. We don't have to think anymore.
I would like to add something because I already experienced that when I was going for a wedding recently. If you Google it, AI, it doesn't work properly on Google because it gives you like one date. It doesn't ask you anything, so it's actually wrong every time you put a date.
You make me very, very happy because every time I hear that AI is wrong, then I actually feel that there's some use to people learning. So
It
thank
is
you.
still, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yes, until someone will tell I don't know, this strange, you know, I don't know where AI is living or something, but whenever someone will tell AI about give the shiur, you can actually send this shiur to AI and then maybe won't make that mistake anymore. But so you have a link here, but I think it was the whole point, and I'm joking now, but it's not such a joke. The idea is that when we want to learn, then we have to understand and try to have a deep understanding of how things work, which is what I tried to do with you today, right? And if I just looked on the Chabad link that was sent out, I wouldn't understand anything. And this understanding is very important. It's very useful throughout the year. Even like you said, oh, I'm invited to a wedding in Israel. It's important to know what day it's on, right? But not only that, in terms of when Yom Kippur will fall, how does that work, and also even technical to be able to plan my year with my employer to know that, oh well, the holidays will fall on Tuesday and Wednesday in the coming month, that it's not going to be on a Shabbat, and my employer needs to understand that. So there's a lot of things that are very, very useful about this. So I think we're going to actually, I was hoping to cover a little bit of the month of Elul, but it's okay. We can do that next week. We'll start with Elul and then go into Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. So any final questions from anyone? It's a very quiet group, but I hope I hope it's okay, and I hope we get into better discussions, like more vocal discussions or disagreements. You can say you are completely wrong. That's but I know that what I try to do is also that there's different levels. Some understand more and some less. I try to today to go into the basic and then into a bit deeper understanding as well. We didn't go into the spiritual, which is another level of understanding why following the moon and following that is very important as well. Right? It's the calendar that we follow is, I'll just say one final thing, is just as an idea that you can look into more, that the solar calendar is considered masculine, right? It's always the same. No changes. It follows the same, right? The same pattern. And like we said, I look outside. Oh, today's August 31st. I wouldn't even know that. Whereas the moon is feminine, and has its ups and downs, right? And connected to that feminine cycle, to also something which is like the word Kabbalah means receiving, something that you receive, not only that you give, which is something that the feminine teaches us to be able to receive as the body of the woman compared to the body of the man, and that we have to be able to notice things, which is something more feminine, not just walk into the room and I'm going to change the world, but to be able to be attentive, like the moon is attentive. The attentiveness of the moon is that it receives the light of the sun and turns it into something beautiful. Like a rabbi once said very simply, right? He said, did you ever see two people walking hand in hand looking at the sun and saying, oh, how beautiful it is? right? So that's something very beautiful about the moon that teaches us the inner beauty of something. And that then when we look up and we realize that our holidays are connected to that, that also becomes very connected. The Talmud discusses it at length about Rosh Hashanah, and it's a day sort of potential, not of fulfillment, because it's empty. It's a day in which the moon is empty. So you don't have full energy on that day. It's a day of building your potential. Whereas Sukkot is the completion of that cycle. It's like a hug, right? And we're sitting out in the Sukkah and looking up at the full moon. So there's a lot. I just summarized many, there's a lot of depth in understanding of how the Jewish calendar follows the feminine and follows the attentiveness and receiving rather than the giving, and that's something very important for us. And there's a lot more to discuss about that as well, which goes back to the very fact that Hashem created the two lights, and one of them was bigger and one was smaller, in order for that teaching as well. And I'm sure you can find online a lot of discussion about it. It's very beautiful as well, but I just wanted to throw that out there as a nice thought before we finish to this shiur. So, Shavua Tov to everyone, and Bezrat Hashem, I'll have the strength to put together the curriculum and everything and send it out to you so that you know where we're heading and what we're going to be learning, and also add the emails. So Shalom, Shavua Tov, Litraot to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rav Moshe.
Shavua Tov,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shabbat
Shabbat Shalom.
Shavuot Tov.
Shalom.